I hate Republicans. I oppose them. I say that all the time. I think that the Republicans are far more damaging. The biggest terrorists, the biggest domestic terrorists in this country, the biggest terrorists internationally is the Republican Party.
Hasan Piker chastising people for being terrorists. It's just ironic because he has pretty openly and pretty repeatedly expressed support for groups that are pretty widely considered to be terroristic groups. So guys, up first, we're going to check in with the leftist star Hasan Piker, who is, of course, at the heart of so much controversy as of late involving his role in the Democratic Party and whether the lovely fellow who said that America deserves 9/11, repeatedly said a Republican senator should be killed, and called for the blood of landlords to run through the streets. Yeah, that lovely guy has been campaigning with some Democratic candidates, and there's been a little bit of a civil war inside the Democratic Party over whether he should be considered in bounds or out of bounds. And I've discussed this in the past, but now he just did an interview with Pod Save America, which is kind of like a establishment progressive Democrat, but not like ultra left, but still solidly progressive show hosted by a bunch of former Obama administration officials. And it's very popular in Democrat land. And in this, Hasan doubled down on some of the most radical sentiments that he's expressed and dropped a new one that I hadn't heard before, describing Republicans, the Republican Party, as the biggest terrorists both domestically and in the world, because that's just totally normal, sane rhetoric that will help us calm things down and come together. Yeah, okay. And yet, it's also so incredibly contradictory with his own other things he also states and believes. So we're going to go through it all. First, here is the headline from Mediaite. Hasan Piker brands Republican Party, quote, biggest terrorist group on earth. Popular socialist streamer Hasan Piker branded the Republican Party the biggest terrorist organization on the planet in an interview with Pod Save America co-host and former Barack Obama speechwriter Jon Favreau on Sunday. Piker made the eyebrow-raising comment after saying he has been disenchanted with the Democratic Party and how it has been, quote, taking my vote for granted. Favreau said he agreed that M's aren't perfect, but compared to the Republicans, they look great. Now here is the part where Hasan drops this lovely take about, you know, the party that like represents roughly half of America, that he says are the worst domestic terrorists and internationally. Let's listen.
I hate Republicans. I oppose them. I say that all the time. I think that the Republicans are far more damaging. The biggest terrorists, the biggest domestic terrorists in this country, the biggest terrorists internationally is the Republican Party. And not only that, but it's just like I want to fight against the growing fascist movement in this country. My frustration with the Democrats is their conciliatory attitude towards that and their lack of investment in this struggle. This idea that, you know, on the one hand, you say Donald Trump's a dangerous force. I see that. I recognize that. But then you turn around and you take on his anti-immigrant narratives and anti-immigrant messaging from the 2020 election that you won and decide you're going to be the sincere candidate that ends up, dealing with the growth of migration in this country. It's a failure. If you were serious about being an anti-fascist, if you were serious about combating these forces, you would take it more seriously. You would do everything you can. You wouldn't try to win by your own coalition that you want to build and, like, you know, parade Liz Cheney around and act as though you're going to win with like never Trumpers or whatever. You would do everything in your power to talk to people on your left flank.
There's so much to unpack about what Hasan just said, and it is absolutely bonkers on so many levels. But first, I want to read a couple funny tweets about it. Sean Fitzgerald, aka Actual Justice Warrior, wrote on X, if the Republicans were actually a terrorist organization, he'd be endorsing them. And this is, of course, a reference to the fact that he has said he supports Hezbollah, a designated terror group. He has simped for Luigi Mangione, a alleged who is currently facing charges for essentially an act of political terrorism, allegedly murdering a healthcare CEO to send a political point. And he, of course, I mean, of all people, like Hasan Piker chastising people for being terrorists is just ironic because he has pretty openly and pretty repeatedly express support for groups that are pretty widely considered to be terroristic groups. So just not exactly the most self-aware person. About what Hasan says here, it is sick and just a total destruction of reality to suggest the Republican Party is a terrorist group. What, just because it lawfully organizes through the democratic process to enact policies you disagree with or think are cruel or bad? That's not what terrorism means, right? They're not targeting civilians with violence to send a political message like the people you cheer for often, Hasan, by the way, the Luigi Mangionis of the world. And it is so beyond reckless and so incredibly dangerous in this time of political violence, where we've seen multiple assassination attempts against President Trump, where we saw Charlie Kirk be shot and killed, to be labeling your opponents. And I would absolutely and do say the same thing when Republicans or conservatives or President Trump label Democrats traitors or evil or threats to the fabric of America or anything like that. It is beyond dangerous to dehumanize and vilify your political opponents like this, because it creates a permission structure for political violence, especially when you yourself say they should be killed. I mean, he has said over and over again that he thinks a Republican senator should be killed. Like, this is a dangerous person demonizing his political opponents in a way that very clearly, I think, increases the chances of people being hurt or even killed in our current moment. And yet he's not treated with adequate, I think, disgust and acknowledgement. Even these Pod Save America dudes who were interviewing Hasan don't seem to get just how breathtakingly radical and disingenuous he is. Also, he doesn't even make sense, because Hasan barely even was clear that whether he was going to vote for Kamala Harris in 2024. He suggested he would vote third party over Gavin Newsom against J.D. Vance, which is hilarious because Gavin Newsom is like pretty darn progressive in the spectrum of American politics, but he's still not radical enough for Hasan. And it's like, wait, so you're simultaneously lying and saying that Republicans are terrorists. They are a terroristic entity, but you still won't vote for a Democrat nominee over them? Like, it would seem that either that's not true, which it isn't, but if you actually believed that, you wouldn't also be waffling about whether you're even gonna support the alternative. Terrorist group or non-terrorist group doesn't seem like a close call to me, if those were actually the options. Now, of course, I don't believe that they are, but yet he's acting as if that's still a close call, and he's still not even supporting the Democrats, which is so funny that he says, well, they should appeal to me more and not these never-Trump Republicans. Listen, whatever you think of never-Trump Republicans, they were voting for the Democrats. So it makes sense the Democrats would work with them. They were actually a part of the team. And partisan politics is unfortunately a team sport in some ways. Hasan was just constantly crapping on Democrats and suggesting he wasn't even going to vote for them, or necessarily, he was saying like Kamala Harris's everything would be the same under Kamala or Trump, which is just, no matter who you prefer, a ridiculous sentiment. That is absolutely not true. And then he's like, but they don't pander to me enough. I genuinely, he is just delusional beyond belief, and yet they are embracing him in lots of these media circles, because he's still saying, also, I find it so funny that he accuses Democrats of accepting like fascism or embracing fascism just because they realize, like, hey, we kind of let the border get out of control under Biden. That's his example of how Democrats are like fascist light, that they've realized, or at least pretended to, that the border got out of control under President Biden, and probably we shouldn't have just had millions of people coming in and doing the catch and release thing through the asylum process that was totally abused. Yeah, just an extremely common sense take some Democrats have come around to about, and he's like, that's proof they're fascist light. I don't understand it. I don't understand the appeal of this guy, or how anyone thinks that he's actually like an asset to the Democratic Party, because he brings all this baggage and yet doesn't even support their candidates. Like, even after, in the same interview that he called Republicans a terroristic institution, he still would not commit to voting for Gavin Newsom over J.D. Vance. Here's a clip from the interview where the Pod Save America dude he's talking to asks him about that. Let's watch.
You said you wouldn't vote for Gavin Newsom against J.D. Vance in 2028.
Yeah,
You vote third party.
I mean, I don't even think that's going to be a problem.
Well, but like a lot of people, including people who share a lot of your critiques of the Democratic Party, hear that and think like this is the problem. You know, when the stakes are concrete, like a Vance presidency, another 4 years of what we're living through, you know, the people who say they're building a movement would, you know, like rather preserve their own power than, you know, do what winning requires and, you know, hold your nose and vote for what you believe would be the lesser of two evils. Like, how do you respond to that?
I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a never Trumper. I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a triple Trump voter, okay? Because it turns out that's all they're tuned into. So if what it takes for the Democrats to turn around and be like, wait a minute, we're losing this guy, we have to win him over again or whatever, instead of just like taking my vote for granted as they've done so over and over again for the left flank, then, you know, I'm going to say things that may or may not end up being true, but it doesn't matter. We're so far out from the election anyway that it's like I'm just saying, look, now is your opportunity to find a good candidate instead. Because,
but you see, as we head into these, that like after what we've lived through these last years, the stakes and the stark difference between even a Democrat who you and I might find not up to par, to say the least, versus Vance or whoever the they put up.
Of course. I mean, I hate Republicans.
So this is so fascinating because, again, like we showed before, he goes on to say Republicans are literally terrorists and yet still will not commit to voting against the terrorists. So it's like so obvious that this dude is a fraud. He clearly doesn't believe the things he's saying. He just admitted that it doesn't matter if what he's saying about who he'll vote for is true or not. It doesn't matter whether you openly lie about politics as a political commentator and whether you mislead intentionally your audience as some kind of bargaining negotiation tactic so that they pander to the left flank more. By the way, I find that hilarious because it's like, how can anybody pretend that Democrats just like constantly pander to the middle and the center when if you look at the last 20 years or even 10 years, right, compare Hillary Clinton 2016, the Democratic nominee, and the agenda she ran on versus Kamala Harris or the Biden campaign, everything's moving to the left, to the left, to the left in terms of massive government spending, massive increases in support for like minimum wage hikes and government health care, all this stuff. They're becoming more and more progressive. Bernie Sanders' influence in the party has massively grown and increased. And yet he's like, they're just constantly pandering to never Trump and they never pander to the left flank, and he's like, they take me for granted. Brother, they never even had you. You basically told people it doesn't matter whether to vote for Kamala or Trump in 2024, and now you're saying you won't even support their nominees. That's the thing. He keeps saying, I want to be courted like a never Trumper. Well, never Trumpers were actually open to voting for the Democrats, whereas you seem to just go scorched earth on them no matter what. But I actually don't really particularly care about that. Like, I'm obviously not somebody who's particularly invested in the continued electoral success of the Democratic Party. I just find it so insane and so disturbing that the supposedly reasonable progressive media class, like the Pod Save America bros, or like Ezra Klein at the New York Times, who just authored a piece essentially defending Hasan, don't get how extreme and how radical and how dangerous this person is, even as he demonizes and borderline incites against Republicans, like when he literally says, kill Rick Scott. This is absolutely unhinged stuff, and yet he seems to only be becoming more embraced inside the Democratic Party. And that's really, really, really disturbing.